Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am the offensive madman, Kyle Robinson, coming to you with the first edition of Is It Worth Your Hard Drive Space? And today I will be reviewing Vampyr for the PS4. I got this game for free through the PlayStation Network, full disclosure. But the entire objective of this particular review series is to let you know if it's worth a pickup on sale, full price, whatever I feel at the end. I am rating these games based on three things. That'll be your gameplay, your story, and the graphics. Now, if let's say there's a lack of story, I will find something to swap it out with, but that's kind of the base guideline at which I try to put all of my reviews together. That said, let's go ahead and we will start with some footage from the game. The first thing here, once it loads, that I'd like to note is the graphics. When it was released, which was 2018, and with it coming in at 14.2 gigs, not the biggest game I'll ever review, but not the smallest either, I'm sure. But for a game released a little over 2 years ago, I would expect a lot more graphically. So watch this interaction and you'll see what I mean.
Strange man was at the door with a pass for our medical facility. I refused him entry.
Darius, how could you know he didn't need our help?
His clothes were too finely tailored to be for Whitechapel.
Perhaps just a friend of that stray poet who is always about.
So you'll notice some of the things here, just from a graphic standpoint. With the PS4 having as much power as it does, as we saw with The Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima, you would expect a little more graphically out of a game that it is only a couple years old. So that said, let's just look at it from that perspective. And I'm going to tell you my personal opinion. I'm thinking a 5 out of 10 is where this rates. Some people are going to get mad and say I'm being picky, but ultimately I think this is really kind of where it sits and the way of how things are in terms of when you put it up against some of those other big name games. The next thing I want to focus on is the story. Now, you play as Dr. Jonathan Reed, set in the 1800 flu epidemic in London. They do a really, really good job at getting the setting to come across and make everything feel authentic. So you get that kind of dramatic yet what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe like almost frantic feel, because they're in the middle of a real life pandemic that was occurring in the 1800s. I think that's a little ironic when you look at our world now, but what the fuck do I know? One of the things that I feel is a little off is when you embrace somebody, which means you consume them. You hear monologues which kind of drive that character's story, and in occasion your story forward, which isn't bad, but it does seem to kind of spin the story in a little bit of a circle. Now, as you'll also notice, there's a branching conversation tree, which isn't really all that common anymore, except in open world RPGs. And one of the things that's really neat about this is you can learn about each individual character, their names, desires, their wants, everything in between. And the more you learn about a character, the more that you earn in XP once you embrace them. Which I think is kind of funny because when you go to choose a difficulty, it definitely says the more people you consume, the easier the game gets. Now, with all that coupled together, the world itself is smaller from what I've seen, but very manageable and has enough life to it to add to the story, which is nice. So with the world, with all of that put together, from what I've played of this story, which is probably about 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours, give or take, I definitely would give the story a 6 out of 10. I think that it's very well done. Now, once I get to the end, I may be more pissed off. Who knows? But from what I've played so far, there's a lot to sink your teeth into, both in lore and in your driving actions for Reed in and of himself. The last thing I want to talk about is the gameplay, which in my opinion is where Vampyr shines. It has a little bit of a repetitive combat system, but it's actually very fulfilling because, as you'll see here, you have boss battles where you can use both heavy weapons, guns, single-handed weapons, and magical abilities that vampiric abilities, I guess is the right word, and that you unlock as you go forward. It's powered by the Unreal Engine, which is usually pretty good. And in the beginning, I was a little worried because the combat was exceptionally laggy. But as I leveled and played further in, it wasn't bad at all. Like I said, it is your standard hack and slash kind of feel. A little repetitive in the way the combat system works, but not terrible. So one of the things that I believe the game shines most in is its RPG elements. As you'll see here, there is a massive tree that you can go into. You have blood, science, bite, body, aggressive, passive, which is defensive, and then ultimate and tactical. As you'll see, I really didn't do a lot with the tactical or the defense yet, but through this particular window, and we'll talk a little bit about it as it plays on, I focused real heavy on building myself a tank. And because of that, I wanted to be able to survive, more or less. Your level is directly related to what you do in terms of putting your points into this tree. You'll see I use the claws, which has its own branching arc here. Everything kind of has its own branching arc, which is really, really unique in the way that it does things. So between the tree and everything else and how you gain your experience both through draining your victims in combat, I think I'm going to give the gameplay of Vampyr an 8 out of 10, which is definitely the highest of the 3 ratings. At the end of the day, my whole purpose of doing these reviews is to answer one question. What is it worth? Well, I did get it for free, but as of time of this recording, it is on sale in the PlayStation Store for $9.99, I think it is. I would go so far as to say that the game is probably worth about $15. Overall, I definitely think it's a game that any story-driven person should. In closing, I would give the graphics 5 out of 10. Mainly because I do feel that they could be better, could be worse. Story, from what I've played, 6 out of 10. I definitely think that it's going to probably improve the longer I play. So it could go up or down based on that. And finally, gameplay, 8 out of 10. That is where this game shines. Between the melee and RPG elements, fantastic pickup. Final score on Vampyr for the PS4 is a 7 out of 10. If you can get it for $15, I would. Right now it's on sale on PS4 for $9.99. That wraps up this edition of Is It Worth the Hard Drive Space? I'd like to thank you guys for watching. If there's anything that you would like me to review, drop it in the comments. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the video and channel. And I do stream on Twitch every single Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Links in the description below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.